Some kitchens look perfect on the blueprints, perfect in photographs, but the people who live in them secretly hate them every day. The mistake isn't about money, but about seemingly harmless decisions made during the signing process. Today, I'll point out the mistakes I've encountered most often. You'd be awesome if you liked this video. 1. Ignoring the work triangle. A musician in Nashville once called me to his house, his voice sounding a bit frustrated. His home had 2 parallel islands in the middle of the room, the kind you often see in villas featured in design magazines. The previous designer had placed the refrigerator in one corner, the cooktop on the first island, and the sink all the way in the other corner of the room, nearly 10 steps apart. On the night of his housewarming, he hand-cooked steaks for his friends, and every time he needed a sprig of green onion or a pat of butter, he had to walk around that entire heavy granite mass. At the end of the night, he dropped a line I still remember. The kitchen was as beautiful as a stage, but cooking in it felt like running in a gym. The triangle between the cooktop, refrigerator, and sink might sound theoretical, but it actually describes the distance you truly walk when preparing a meal, not when standing around taking photos for a good angle. The sum of the 3 sides should be between 12 and 26 feet to be within reach. That's it. No need to make it more complicated. What I see many people ignore is the thought that this principle only applies to small kitchens, while in large kitchens, they think they can place things however they want. Completely wrong. The larger the kitchen, the easier it is for the triangle to stretch excessively without you realizing it until you've moved in. If you want a large island, go for it. I won't stop you. Just install a prep sink or a cooktop right on that island so you don't have to walk the length of the room just for a missing green onion. For families with 2 cooks, I often suggest a smaller secondary triangle, like a separate prep area for the second person, so the 2 don't trip over each other in the middle of the kitchen. Everyone loves a grand-looking double-island kitchen. Just be prepared to burn a few hundred extra calories than planned every time you host a party. There is a very hot trend on social media that I advise you to consider carefully before following. I'll tell you why in the next part. 2. Overusing open shelving. Have you noticed? Every spring, Pinterest is flooded with photos of kitchens with open wood shelves holding cute pastel ceramic plates. It looks enchanting. I was almost convinced when I first started in the industry. But I have remodeled no fewer than a dozen kitchens where the owners had previously removed all the upper cabinets to install open shelving, only to hire a contractor to reinstall cabinet doors a few months later. The reason sounds a bit funny, but it's true. Kitchen dust and grease film silently settle on every plate even if you don't touch them for a whole week. By the time you need to use them, you have to wash them first even though they aren't dirty, in the conventional sense. Not to mention, not every home has a set of matching dishes as beautiful as those in photos. Those warped plastic containers for leftovers will be fully exposed in front of guests. There's a tip I often share with clients. Try to imagine your open shelves after 3 months without wiping them, rather than imagining them during the housewarming photo shoot. If that vision makes you cringe a little, open shelving might not fit your lifestyle. A small corner, about 1/5 of the upper cabinet area, is enough for open shelving for a few nice glasses or colorful glass spice jars. Leave the rest behind closed doors as it should be. If you want an airy feel without dusting every weekend, try frosted or fluted glass doors. They offer a glimpse of the items inside while blocking most of the dust and grease flying off the pans. I also recommend placing open shelves far from the main cooking area, near a window or a breakfast nook, for example, so they catch less grease. For people who love cleaning every day or almost never cook at home, full open shelving is fine. Just be honest with yourself about whether you are ready for that extra cleaning task. 3. Boring or non-functional lighting. Kitchen lighting is probably the thing people pay the least attention to when planning a remodel, and that's exactly why it causes more trouble than you'd think. A client of mine in Chicago had a dark wood kitchen so beautiful I asked to take a photo of it for a sample, but they skimped on the lighting, only installing a few high-wattage recessed lights shining down from above. Every time the husband stood there slicing meat or chopping onions directly underneath, his own shadow fell over the cutting board, blocking almost his entire view. One night, rushing to cook so his kid could make it to tutoring on time, he cut his thumb and needed 5 stitches in the ER. The following week, they called me for an emergency installation of under-cabinet LED strips. This has little to do with aesthetic taste and everything to do with whether you can clearly see the knife in your hand. A high-functioning kitchen needs 3 layers of light: ambient lighting for the whole space, task lighting shining directly onto the countertops where you cut and prep, and accent lighting to give the room depth so it doesn't look flat like a clinic. Under-cabinet LED strips are the cheapest investment with the most noticeable impact among those 3 layers. And I always advise clients to do them first, even before discussing decorative pendants. There is one small detail many forget: the color temperature of the bulbs. Lights that are too white or too cold will make the kitchen feel like a clinic even if you've installed all 3 layers. Choose a warm yellow light, around 2,700 to 3,000 Kelvin, for a much more pleasant feel in the evening. Keep that classic chandelier hanging in the middle of the room, the heirloom from your mother. Just add the functional lighting under the cabinets. You keep the old beauty while avoiding an unplanned ER trip. Safety is one thing, but there is another decision in the kitchen that could cost you a full $25,000 when selling your house. I'll tell you right now. 4. Color disasters. I often joke with colleagues that kitchen cabinet paint is the only thing in a house that can cost you money twice. Once when you paint it, and once when you have to repaint it to sell the house. A young couple in Portland once painted their entire kitchen cabinetry burnt orange paired with a neon green island, following the maximum personality spirit trending online at the time. A few years later, work forced them to move to the East Coast, and the house sat on Zillow for 5 months without a single closing, despite a good structure and a solid location. Prospective buyers came and went, everyone wary of the cost to repaint the entire cabinet system. Eventually, they had to drop the price by $25,000 to cover the cost of repainting everything in a neutral cream, just to move the house. Kitchen remodeling is already the most expensive part of a house, typically eating up about 10 to 15% of the property value. Choosing colors that are too bold for fixed elements like cabinets or stone countertops is like betting on the aesthetic taste of a future buyer, whom you have no way of knowing. I'm not saying you have to live in a kitchen you hate just for resale value, but at least consider how long you plan to stay in that home. A safe yet personalized way is to choose warm neutrals for the majority of the cabinetry, letting vibrant colors appear in easily replaceable items like bar stools, pendants, or small countertop appliances. If you love strong colors, try a 2-tone cabinet look, keeping the uppers neutral and concentrating the bold color on the lowers, or just the island. This is the method I use most for clients who love color but still worry about resale value. If you have no intention of selling for the next 10 years, paint it whatever color you want. It's still your home. 5. Clearance conflicts for doors or appliances. This is the type of mistake I hate most in this profession because it has nothing to do with aesthetics. It's purely a miscalculated geometry problem. A family in the mountains near Denver once lived for 3 months with a dishwasher they almost couldn't use normally. They bought a high-end German machine, not cheap at all, and had a local carpenter install it into an L-shaped corner of the kitchen. The carpenter didn't account for the projection of the drawer handle right next to it, so every time the machine door lowered, it hit that handle directly, only opening to about a 45-degree angle, not enough to pull out the dish rack. To wash dishes, they had to pull out the adjacent drawer first, and then they could open the machine door. They did this for 3 months until they called me to relocate it. This type of error is nearly invisible on 2D blueprints. It only reveals itself when you're actually standing there, hands full of dishes, trying to open every single door. I have a habit I now apply to every project. I require the designer to simulate the drawing with all doors open at the same time, instead of only drawing them when everything is neatly closed. For L-shaped or U-shaped corners, a 2 to 3 inch filler strip inserted between the cabinet and the corner wall is enough to give the door much more room for a comfortable swing. Don't skimp on those 2 or 3 inches. It's much cheaper than fixing it later. If you've already installed it wrong, don't rush to tear everything down at great expense. Sometimes just changing the hinge direction or switching to recessed pulls instead of protruding handles is enough to resolve the collision without redoing the whole cabinet system. The most beautiful kitchen drawing is meaningless if one important category is forgotten, and that is exactly what I will talk about next. 6. Forgetting electrical and plumbing needs? Do you know what part makes me lose the most sleep when reviewing kitchen plans? It's not the cabinet color, nor the stone type. It's the electrical and plumbing plans. This is the driest part of the design process, So many homeowners want to skip through it quickly to get to the fun part of picking colors and materials. But that haste causes the biggest consequences. A family in Boston once designed a very pretty island, intended for their two kids to sit and do homework on laptops while the mom cooked dinner. Great idea, except no one ran electrical wires out there. The island was stunning, but didn't have a single outlet. As a result, every evening the kids had to plug their chargers into the wall outlet, stretching cords across the main kitchen walkway. One evening, the mom walked by carrying a hot pot of soup and tripped over that cord. Soup went everywhere. Luckily, no one was seriously burned, but the son's $2,000 laptop flew straight into the wall and shattered. Kitchens today aren't just about a gas range and an oven anymore. Built-in steam ovens, point-of-use water filters, large air fryers, each requires its own power source and heat dissipation space. Sit down with the electrician from the very first blueprint and list everything you plan to buy, including items you haven't bought yet but intend to, and it will save you a lot of trouble later. For islands, choose pop-up outlets hidden under the stone that pop up when needed and then fold down. They're safe and don't ruin the look. If the walls are already tiled with stone and you discover a missing outlet, it's not the end of the road. There are power tracks that mount under the upper cabinets that can be installed without tearing up the wall. I often use this solution for small renovation projects. 7. Bizarre backsplashes. I have to confess, I see this mistake so often that sometimes when I walk into a new kitchen, the first thing I look at isn't the cabinets but the backsplash area. In Phoenix, there was a family where the wife loved handmade ceramics. She custom-ordered a set of 3D mosaic tiles with intricate protruding shapes for the backsplash. Looking at it, it was truly a piece of art. Then 6 months passed. Cooking grease plus the desert dust characteristic of that region clung to every crevice on the tile surface. She used a toothbrush to scrub each tile until her hands were raw. When she called me in, my only option was to tear it all out. The problem was the tile was bonded so securely to the quartz countertop below that when the contractor pried it off, he cracked the expensive stone slab itself. A backsplash doesn't need to be the loudest focal point in the kitchen. It just needs to do a good job connecting the cabinets and the countertop. The more patterns, the more grooves, the harder it is to clean. And the kitchen is a place where grease splatters every day, not an art gallery. Classic subway tile is always a safe bet. If you want some personality, a herringbone or chevron pattern is enough to create a difference without sacrificing ease of cleaning. If you have a healthy budget, run the countertop stone straight up as a slab backsplash. There are no grout lines to catch dirt, and it looks much more high-end, a trend I've seen more and more clients choose in recent years. No matter how much you love a special tile pattern, ask the seller specifically about the cleaning difficulty before ordering the whole set. Don't let emotions override that practical question. The backsplash is done. Now look up just above the cabinets. There is a tiny gap there breeding something you don't want to know exists. 8. Floating cabinets that don't reach the ceiling. $4,000. That is the amount a homeowner in a condo overlooking the Seattle Harbor saved by not making the kitchen cabinets go all the way to the ceiling, leaving a gap of about 14 inches at the top. It sounded reasonable at the time. Who doesn't want to save money? But Seattle is famously damp year-round, and that floating gap gradually became the perfect home for mold and cobwebs. This spring, they climbed a ladder for a routine cleaning and discovered a whole family of small mice had nested there for who knows how long, surrounded by a layer of black dust mixed with grease as thick as glue. They called for an immediate teardown, and this time they redid the entire system with floor-to-ceiling cabinets. That gap does make the ceiling look lower than it is, visually cramping the space. Everyone knows that. But the part few notice is that it is nearly impossible to reach for regular cleaning, so dust accumulates year after year until there's a strange smell or you have to climb up for another reason and discover it. If you are building new or doing a major remodel, take the cabinets to the ceiling and add crown molding at the top to hide a ceiling that isn't perfectly level. This is standard in almost every new luxury condo now. If the budget doesn't allow for taller doors right now, closing that gap with a matching wood fill panel is enough, turning it into a flat wall surface instead of a dust-catching box. 9. Failing to maintain natural stone. $18,000 for a Calicotta marble slab imported from Italy, with veining so beautiful guests had to stop and stare. That's what a family in Houston spent on their kitchen island countertop. I advised them to apply sealant regularly from the start, but they thought expensive stone should be durable on its own without extra care. One weekend evening, friends came over, and someone accidentally spilled a glass of red wine along with some BBQ sauce on the countertop, and no one wiped it up immediately, leaving it overnight. By the next morning, the acid in the wine and sauce had soaked deep into the stone fibers, leaving a stain right in the middle of the island that looked like dried blood. All conventional cleaning chemicals were useless. They had to live with that stain as a rather expensive reminder. Natural stone is porous. This is something many people only learn after buying it. Acid from a lemon slice, a drop of coffee, or wine, if left too long, will soak deep inside rather than sitting on the surface as people imagine. Once it has soaked in, there is almost no way to restore it to its original state. If you love the beauty of natural stone, schedule a sealing once or twice a year. Consider it mandatory maintenance, not a fun option. If you are wary of frequent care, engineered quartz now simulates natural veining nearly as well and is almost immune to staining. For those who still love original marble and don't mind a few scratches over the years, choosing a honed finish instead of a polished one will help scratches show less under the lights. To make a kitchen truly high-end, there is one thing you and I must absolutely hide away. See below. 10. Ignoring integrated appliance solutions. I've noticed one thing. The most beautiful kitchens I've ever worked on have one thing in common. You can hardly see where the refrigerator is. A couple bought a luxury studio in Manhattan where the living room and kitchen were connected with no partition. To save money, they chose a freestanding refrigerator with a large touchscreen and a separate silver-finished dishwasher, instead of panel-ready versions that match the rest of the cabinetry. Sitting on the sofa looking into the kitchen, those two shiny metal blocks hit you right in the eye, breaking the continuity of the living space. Every time the dishwasher ran, the motor noise from the freestanding metal shelf vibrated clearly, echoing right as they sat down to watch a movie in the evening. In April this year, unable to take it anymore, they spent the money to redo the cabinet housing to hide both appliances behind wooden doors matching the kitchen cabinets. The issue wasn't that the appliances were ugly, but that they broke the overall design language of the whole kitchen, turning a space that should have been seamless into a display of metal and various screens. The trend now leans heavily toward hiding appliances so the human eye can focus on core materials like wood, stone, and color, rather than being distracted by brand logos and touchscreens. If you are planning a kitchen remodel, consider panel-ready refrigerators and dishwashers. The carpenter will make a door panel identical to the cabinet system to mount on the front of the appliance. So when you look at it, you only see cabinets and not the appliances. If the budget doesn't allow for it immediately, choosing appliances in a color that matches the cabinets and placing them in a corner out of the direct line of sight from the living room can help. 11. Designing too safely in boredom. There's a phrase I hear constantly from clients when I walk into their kitchens for the first time. It's beautiful, but why does it feel cold? White cabinets, white quartz, white subway tile, and shiny stainless steel hardware. This style of kitchen dominated for a decade, and now walking into many of them feels like standing in a dental clinic, rather than a place where a family gathers for Sunday dinner. I once visited a home in the Dallas suburbs where the owner spent quite a bit of money on a stark white kitchen following that exact safety formula. Their 16-year-old daughter blurted out a comment to me that made the whole family burst into laughter. "Our kitchen looks like a toothpaste commercial." It was funny but also quite accurate. If you want true warmth, bring in natural materials. Oak or walnut with clear wood grain. Brass hardware that isn't polished so it develops a patina over the years. And a warm cream or light charcoal paint instead of stark white. If you already have an all-white kitchen, you don't need to tear it out and start over. Swap the hardware for leather or brass, lay a water-resistant runner rug along the cabinet run, and the space will feel completely different. You don't need to demolish the whole kitchen for that warmth. Swap a few handles for brass or leather, hang a woven rug along the cabinets, and add a few real plants instead of plastic ones. Those 3 small things cost less than $500, but are enough to make the kitchen stop looking like a clinic.